Shalom Israel. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, all honor, and all glory to Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahweh Shai, by Hashem, Kadash, the Barnes, the Apostles, and other great millstone for teaching us this truth. Peace and blessings to hope like division. Shalom. Yahweh is the name of the Heavenly Hebrew. By Hashem means the name, and Yahweh Shai is the name of the only begotten Son. Back in our lesson, and I've seen the title of this article is the largest ever NATO air drill underway. And ultimately, we're going to go into these wars and rumors of wars that we are seeing the build up towards World War III, which is prophesied in the Bible, which we'll get a few scriptures to go into that right there and prove it. So I have two quick articles I do want to dive into just to get the situation at hand and what's happening, what's going on. And this one right here also, let's get that title. NATO's biggest air exercise ever kicks off, led by Germany. And I may get a little bit of this one right here. There's also this popped up. So global powers ramping up nuclear arsenals. So you have a lot of these nations are preparing to go to war. Now let's jump to this article right here. Get out the way. Now it says some 10,000 service members and 250 aircraft are involved in the exercises this June, which you had a few months back, if not last year. You had North Korea, do a pretty much a show of power. When you had, I believe, America and I believe South Korea were going to do a joint drill together. And you pretty much had North Korea step in and pretty much show off, and say you're not the only one with, military might. So you're seeing the tensions are high and continuing to build up. Now, so NATO embarked on the largest Air Force exercise in the alliance's history on Monday, amid heightened tension with Russia over the Ukraine conflict. So according to the Berlin's military, the drills, which have been dubbed Air Defender 23, and are being hosted by Germany, will play out mostly in the nation's airspace between June 12th and 23rd, and the 23rd, Slovakia. Excuse me. Now, with some operations taking place in the Netherlands and the Czech Republic, the mass exercise will involve some 10,000 service members and 250 aircraft with 100 planes fitted by the U.S. alone. And we'll look at these last two paragraphs right here and jump to the article. Now, apart from the U.S., the operation would be attended by 24 other nations, including not only NATO members, but also Sweden and Japan. The focuses of the exercise is to optimize and expand cooperation between the participating countries with plans to model a NATO Article 5 assistance scenario. The latter clause, which lies at the heart of the U.S.-led bloc, stipulates that an attack on one member of the alliance would constitute an attack on all of them. Which you almost saw that situation happening with Ukraine, which I believe Ukraine, tried to join NATO. I forgot the exact article, but we had America, saying that they would defend every inch of NATO territory. Saying that to Russia. Saying that they wouldn't hold back, for lack of better words. Because you had that situation, happen with the heightened tensions and Russia making those threats against, Ukraine and America to use thermonuclear capabilities. It was one to bring up that situation right there. And this was right here. It says, let's read one more time. The latter clause, which lies at the heart of the U.S.-led bloc, stipulates that an attack on one member of the alliance would constitute an attack on all of them. U.S. Ambassador to Germany, Amy Gutmann, said that she would be pretty surprised if any world leader was not taking note of what this shows in terms of the spirit of this alliance, adding that this includes Russian President Vladimir Putin. Also, as we're here, NATO has doubled forces in Eastern Europe since 2021. Now let's get a little bit of this article right here, just to add on to the point. As a German Panavia Tornado aircraft taxis down the flight line at Jaguar Airfield, Germany, on the kickoff day of the exercise Air Defender 2023, June 9, 2023. U.S. Air National Guard photo is showing that right there. So you read the title right there. It said the OCCAS U.S. alliance, composed of the eastern nations of Marinus, Pluvius, Gracius, and Cenarius, have invaded Germany and are trying to push north to the Baltic Sea. The German military, or Bundeswehr, if I said that correctly, said in a release to do so, the alliance is relying on a mix of sabotage operations and special forces supported by air power. In response, NATO has triggered Article V, calling for the collective defense of Germany. So all of this is fictional, but it is the premise of Air Defender 23, a massive air exercise led by Germany and taking place across Europe that kicked off June 12th. All told, 25 nations are participating in the nearly 2-week exercise. So that's pretty much the point right there, which we can read a little bit of this article right here. Because a World War III would be by the way of thermonuclear missiles, if you don't know already. As the global powers ramping up nuclear arsenals, the number of stored warheads ready for potential use has increased by 86 since 2022, as the heavy nations are also preparing to go to war and preparing to fight. Mentioned in Book of Joel's 3rd chapter, let the weak say, I am strong, yet the nations start to stand up against America, especially making advancements in their thermonuclear arsenals. As it says right here, the nuclear powers are actively modernizing and expanding their arsenals and rising geopolitical tensions, according to a report by the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute released on Monday. And read the last three right here. It says Think Tank estimated that as of January 2023, Russia, the U.S., and the U.K., France, China, India, Pakistan, North Korea, and Israel had a total of 12,512 warheads, with 9,576 stored in military stockpiles for potential use, an increase of 86 from 1 year previously. And of course, they're not going to give you the total exact number of everything that they have, as the report has claimed that as of January, Russia and the U.S., which between them possess almost 90% of the world's nuclear weapons, had 1,674 and 1,770 deployed warheads respectively last year. Russia had approximately 1,588 warheads, while the U.S. had 1,744. It's according to SIPRI. Now, the think tank noted that the size of the respective nuclear arsenals seem to have remained relatively stable in 2022, although transparency regarding nuclear forces declined in most countries following the outbreak of hostiles in Ukraine. So, the main point, I want to go into these tensions that the Lord is building, as you see NATO doing exercises and all those different nations are, join with them. I believe over 25. Also, 25 nations are participating in the nearly 2-week exercise. And ultimately, once again, these nations are preparing to go to war, preparing for a fight. Now, it's Matthew 24, 3-8, and these are end-time signs. And these are things that will take place and play out before our Lord Yahweh Shai will make his grand return. Now, it says, as he sat upon the mount, all the disciples came up to him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? What shall be signs of the coming and of the end of the war? Now, it's going to list up those signs that we would see now take place once again. And many people are going to continue to see these things and think nothing of it. Think of it just as a coincidence, Think of it's happening by chance. Because ultimately, Jake wants to stay here. They want to live in La La Land. They want to continue to do things that they used to do. Party, so-called live it up. That as in the days of Noah's spirit. So as going back to 24:37, how we're as in the days of Noah. How they're continuing to party, disregarding these warnings. And guess what? It took them all away. They're going to realize too late. But it's that main point, verse 4, and Yahweh shall answer and said to them, Take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come my name, saying, I am anointed, and shall deceive many. And you especially know who you are, taking heed to, and who your true teachers are. So you also have a lot of these Israelite camps that are being exposed as of late, especially dealing with IUCBK, IUIC. You got to be careful and wary of those guys, man. Because a lot of them are trying to keep you here and lead you astray. Pushing at the charagma, the MOTB is a spiritual mark, when that's not the case, And also many other examples, but I do want to, continue on the lesson now. Verse 6, main point right here. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars that we're seeing now. Even a few months back, you saw the tensions only building. With Ukraine and Russia making threats to use thermonuclear capabilities against Ukraine, and you had the U.S. pretty much, trying to step in and say, you better not do that. We'll defend, pretty much every inch. We'll defend. See if I can get it real quick. Cause we had it on the RT News also, but here's right here. And this was I was speaking of and mentioning earlier, dealing with Ukraine. I said Biden warns Putin, U.S. will defend every inch of NATO land after Ukraine annexation. to get the definition from that. Now it says, international law is the forcible acquisition of one state's territory by another state, usually following military occupation of the territory. In current international law, it's generally held to be an illegal act. I'm trying to get the definition for it here, I think. The act of annexing something or the state of being annexed, the addition of an area or region to a country, state, etc. But which I believe you had Russia do to Ukraine. As you get right here, as the President Biden on Friday warned Vladimir Putin that America and its allies are fully prepared to defend every single inch of NATO territory after the Russian tyrant claimed to annex 4 Ukrainian regions. Mr. Putin, don't misunderstand what I'm saying. Biden said the conclusion of remarks focused on the Hurricane Ian every inch. But, that's just one of the points I was wanting to get since I mentioned and brought it up earlier. But verse 6, now said, and you shall hear wars and rumors of wars. See that you've been at trouble, for all these things must come back. For all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. So these are things that we would see and that would take place before our Lord Yahweh Shai will return. Verse 7, for a nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. And we're seeing all these things. A famine brewing, plagues, pestilence. As there's a photo or just articles coming out of, tons of fish just dying, washing up the shore, which I may make less going into, just go into, the end time signs. We'll see. Verse 8, all these are the beginning of sorrows. So we're just in the beginning of this, man. Things are just beginning to kick off. Now, it's Revelations 11-14. Now, it says, the second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. Now, what is that woe speaking of? Basing on the desolation. See if I can get the definition for it. Hate that I have to go to this. The great sorrow or distress, things that cause sorrow or distress, troubles. Is that not war? Now the second world is past, and behold, the third will come quickly. Now it's going to the Second World War. Now it says, and behold, the third will come quickly. That Third World War. Once again, as you see, NATO beginning the biggest exercise they've ever done. And a few months back, you had North Korea, do a training drill and basically showing off their might, flexing their arm against the U.S. and also South Korea. So the tensions are high, especially also dealing with Russia. Now let's get a few more scriptures, and we'll shut down from there. And there's Isaiah 9:5, also to get and prove that World War III is prophesied in the Bible and will be by the way of thermonuclear missiles, because this will show you right here. It says, for every battle of the warrior is with confused noise and garments rolled in blood. Now, you always like to use the example of the movie 300. If you've seen that, great movie, but dealing with the bloodshed, the clashing of shields, the swords, the screaming on the battlefield. But showing this to be something completely different on a whole nother level. Now it says, but this shall be with burning and fuel of fire. What do you think that is speaking of right there, man? Thermonuclear missiles, man. Thermonuclear fire. Let's see. Let's get Jeremiah 50. This is a good chapter right here too, which I think when you go into around the 20 plus verses, which I'll get after this right here in the 9th verse. I said, for lo, I'll raise and cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations. You have a lot of nations that are going to come up against Babylon, against America, from north country, and they shall set themselves in array against her. From thence she shall be taken. The arrows shall be as of a mighty expert men. None shall return in vain. Meaning all those missiles are going to hit their mark. They're not going to collide and crash into each other and explode. They're not going to land in the ocean and miss their mark. Because the Lord's going to be directing those missiles to hit exactly where it needs to be. Now let's get a few more verses up here. Let's get the 14th verse. We can actually get the 13th verse, because I worked there. As because the wrath of the Lord, it shall not be inhabited. You can also get that in Isaiah 13. House place will never be inhabited again. Now it said, because of the wrath of the Lord, it shall not be inhabited, but shall be wholly desolate. And everyone that goeth by Babylon shall be astonished, and hiss at all her plagues. Verse 14, main point. Put yourselves in array against Babylon round about. All you that bend the bow, shoot at her, spare no arrows, for she has sinned against the Lord. And speaking of those arrows, it's not speaking of actual and literal arrows that you would shoot from a regular bow and arrow. Because what regular, arrow could be shot from one place on the earth to the complete other side? None. So showing you not speaking of no regular bow and arrow, but speaking of those missiles, man. When you look into those ICBMs and how far they can be, shot, into the sky and how far they can travel, it's a lot, and no regular bow and arrow can do that. Just to show you what it's speaking of. Now, let's get 15th verse. As a shout against her round about, she hath given her hand, her foundations are fallen, her walls are thrown down, for it is the vengeance of the Lord, take vengeance upon her, as she had done do unto her. As it was mentioned in Isaiah 47:1, come sit in the dust, O daughter of Babylon. So America is going to be brought low, as well as mentioning book of Obadiah. Now there's two more verses I do want to get. Now let's get on verse 22. And we'll shut it down with verse 25 and jump to the last few scriptures. Now it says, verse 22, a sound of the battle is in the land, and of great destruction. Now it said, how is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How has Babylon become a desolation among the nations? I have laid a snare for thee, and thou art also taken, O Babylon, and thou was not aware thou art found and also caught, because thou hast striven against Yahweh Bashem Shai. That's why scripture going to Isaiah 34, how the Lord's indignation is upon this place. Now, verse 25, what do I favorite here? And this should show you what it's speaking of, man. It should be clear as day. Verse 25, now it says, the Lord, Yahweh Bashem Shai, has opened his armory. Did we not just read Isaiah 9:5? How his war will be by the way of fuel and flaming fire? What do you think it's speaking of right here? The Lord had opened his armory and had brought forth the weapons of his indignation. Those missiles, man. For this is the work of the Lord of hosts, power of hosts, in the land of the Chaldeans. That scripture going to how the Lord has created the waster to destroy, going into those missiles. Now, let's jump into a few other scriptures, and we'll shut down from there. Isaiah 34, as I was mentioning, as ye come near ye nations, do hear and hearken ye people, let the earth hear, and all that is therein, the world, and all things that come forth of it. Verse 2, for the indignation of Yahweh Bashem Shai upon all nations. The Lord is also going to destroy the 2/3 of our wicked people. Going back to the book of Zechariah, the 13th chapter and 8th verse. Now, as in his fury upon all their armies, he had utterly destroyed them, he had delivered them to the slaughter. Verse 3, their slain also should be cast out, and their stink shall come out of their carcasses, and the mountain shall be melted with their blood. So it'll be a ton of death, man, tons of judgment. Verse 4, and all the hosts of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall be rolled together as a scroll. And the heavens being rolled together as a scroll going to the mushroom clouds. And all the hosts shall fall down, and the leaf falleth from the vine, and as a falling fig from the fig tree. Verse 5, for my sword shall be bathed in heaven. What is that sword speaking of? Those missiles, man. Behold, it shall come down upon Idumea, another word for Esau, Edom, and upon the people of my curse to judgment. Get something to drink. Now verse 6. Now it says, the sword of the Lord is made fat. The sword of Yahweh Bashem Shai is filled with blood, is made fat with fatness, and with the blood of lambs and goats, with the fat of the kidneys of rams. For Yahweh Bashem Shai has a sacrifice in Basra, and a great slaughter in the land of Idumea. So Yahweh Bashem Shai is getting ready to destroy this place. Because when they make those sacrifices, they'll throw the fat into that fire, man. Guess what? This going to be thermonuclear fire, man. And it's looking ripe for the picking, as we get right here. As in Joel 9:13. Now it said, proclaim ye among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, and let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. So basically going into these other nations are starting to stand up, trying to wake up. Verse 10, being ready to fight. Now to be your plowshares into swords and your prunings into spears. Turn these farming tools into weapons of war. As I mentioned earlier, you have a lot of nations that are starting to stand up against America and Babylon the Great, and starting to advance in their nuclear arsenal and their military might. Preparing to fight, preparing to go to war. Be your plowshares into swords and your pruners into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. So, once again, as I mentioned, you have these nations starting to stand up. Verse 11, assemble yourselves and come all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. This is the cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. Let the heathen be awakened and come up to the valley of Yehoshaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Put you in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come get you down, for the press is full. The fats overflow, for the wickedness is great and almost ready for the picking. As we're seeing the end time signs, we got a few scriptures going Matthew 24 through 8. We're getting closer and closer to the end, those wars and winds wars that we are seeing. As you see, the nations are starting to prepare to go to war. You're seeing the constant buildup, with the tensions between the nations, the conflict constantly breaking out. Things are not settling down. There's so many things happening and taking place and playing out as we speak. Now, 2 Ezra 16:13. Towns that point I was mentioning earlier, dealing with those arrows. As for strong is the right hand that bendeth the bow, as arrows that he shooteth are sharp, and should not miss when they begin to be shot into the ends of the world. Now, what regular arrow can be shot from one place on the earth to the complete other? None. So, showing you it's not speaking of no regular bow and arrow. Speaking of these intercontinental ballistic missiles, if you can receive it. And we got a few scriptures just to prove that. And how it's worthy by the way of thermonuclear missiles. But pretty much the main point. I saw that the article, and I just wanted to dive into it because this is also biblical prophecy. And Yahweh Shai is ultimately building these things up in order to usher and to bring about World War III. But what's the previous main point already? Lord was edifying, Lord on tied the points together the best of my ability. I do want to give all praises, all honor, and all glory to Yahweh Shai, the Barnes, the apostles, and elders, great millstone for teaching us his truth, peace, and blessings to the whole collective of Israel. And Shalom, stands so low.